Hi from London, it's Gareth here, and today's topic is the importance of reading when you're learning a foreign language, even if your primary goal is to speak it. Now this might seem a bit counterintuitive, and of course in the language learning world among adult learners there's a lot of emphasis often on wanting to speak the language, and that's understandable. It's the emphasis I have myself. There are many reasons to doubt the importance of reading in that goal. After all, reading came late to the party, if you like, if you look historically. Many people today are still illiterate yet perfectly fluent in a language, their first language or languages, and for centuries of course languages weren't written down, for millennia. Look at children too, they learn to speak first and only later do they learn to write. Isn't that the natural order of things? Should we really not be trying to learn in the same way that children do, and not to maybe take up reading until later on? Seems quite a good argument. Another good argument against too much reading when you're a learner is, it can actually get in the way of good pronunciation. It's perhaps even more the case if the language you're learning uses the Latin alphabet like English, because often, the values attached to individual letters can be slightly different, and we look at the written word from an English perspective, and that could actually confuse us and lead us to mispronounce words. I think there's something in all those arguments, so I'm not saying, that there isn't a point there. But what I am saying is, yes, put emphasis on good pronunciation at the beginning. Speak as early as you can, learn some basic phrases. It's great for motivation, it's great for making you feel that you're underway. But also, think about the value of reading as a beginner, and particularly, I think, as an intermediate or an advanced language learner. Because why? Well, I think let's now talk about some of the pros of reading. Really, one of them is it gives you massive concentrated exposure to language. Now, it's all right saying, we're going to take the baby in arms approach, we're going to learn like kids. If you think about how children learn, they are often, lying on their backs, gurgling, waving their arms for the first 2 years or so. Sorry if there's any 2-year-old kids listening, I'm probably slightly underestimating your ability. But you know what I mean, they've got a huge amount of time, and as I said last week, often what they're trying to express is quite simple too. As adult learners, we want to make progress much more quickly, we want to talk about sophisticated ideas, and the best way to kickstart our vocabulary and our powers of expression is to get the massive exposure that you can get through reading texts. After all, we're told we should learn vocabulary in chunks, in context, set phrases, collocations, words that go together, to sit an exam, sefyll ar holiad in Welsh, to stand an exam. Learn these collocations together. Where do you get language in context? I talked about passive audio exposure in Tuesday's fun vlog, and of course you can listen to audio books too, but the written word is still a great way to get that repeated exposure to your language. A well-designed conversational language course, work with a teacher, will put emphasis on pronunciation at the beginning. It will practice the core vocabulary and the core structures with you. But there's never enough material, there are never enough hours with your teacher or language partner. You have to increase your exposure, the input that you get. And one way of doing that, as I've already said, is through audio, but the other way of doing it is through reading a lot. So get yourself exposed to language chunks. The other thing is, we want to learn as adults, we want educated speech, we want to sound like sensible adults, we want to discuss sophisticated topics, no doubt, in our areas of English. And the fact is that adults in your language, the way they speak, will be heavily influenced by literate culture, writing and reading. So if you want to emulate a well-educated speaker, you need to be getting used to the way that they express themselves, and one of the best ways to do that is to do reading. There are different ways of reading: extensive, where you're just getting, you're reading, you're skipping words you don't know, but you're getting the story if you like; intensive, where you're concentrating, pulling things apart, skimming. There are different ways. We can talk about that again another time. But I think trying to get some extensive exposure to written word which sort of is maybe plays, or it's novels with a lot of dialogue, comic books for example. These are the sort of things which will help you with your speaking too, rather than going maybe for technical manuals, legal texts, something which is you know, unless that happens to be your interest, divorced from what you're going to be wanting to do when you're speaking. Of course, if you're doing language exams, as I do, as a motivator, or you need them for your education or for citizenship, you're going to have a reading section in those exams too, so you simply have to get better at reading. But the other thing is, I think a lot of reading can really help you get into the mindset and the culture of a language, and that will help you to relate better even with, and perhaps especially with, lesser educated people, as well as your highfalutin reading types. So choose things which are going to be fun for you. It may be comic books, it may be newspapers. You know, don't overwhelm yourself, so go for graded texts if you can find them, and that way, you know, try and build it in a little bit of reading each day, and over time I think you'll find it does bring benefits. So I'd say read early, read often, even if your aim is primarily to speak. Do you agree with that approach, or do you think, no, you don't want to read at all? If you are a reader, what sort of things are you reading? And, you know, what are your goals with reading? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. There's a link underneath to my free 5-part Discover How to Get Fluent video course, which is for free. You can sign up to that. Thanks for watching, and auf Wiedersehen.